Martin Bucer was a Protestant reformer who left a lasting impact on the Reformed, Lutheran, and Anglican church traditions. He was involved in spreading and shaping the Reformed faith in Germany, as well as helping the Reformation in England. Bucer was a Protestant ecumenist who tried to help Lutheran and Swiss Reformed traditions find concord on the doctrine of the Eucharist, as well as trying to win Roman Catholicism to Reformed doctrine. His most notable contributions were to the Anglican Ordinal in 1550, the Book of Common Prayer in 1552, and the First Helvetic Confession in 1536. Martin Bucer was born on November 11, 1491, in Schlettstedt, Alsace. In 1507, he became a friar in the Dominican order, being schooled in the town's famous Latin school. Then in January 1517, his superior sent him to Heidelberg to pursue studies and to acquire his doctorate. It was during that time that he began to be influenced by the writings of Erasmus and the theology of Martin Luther, who he actually observed at the Heidelberg Disputation in April 1518. Bucer became a follower of Luther and sought to annul his vows to the Dominican order. After a decade and a half as a Dominican monk, he was released from that order in April 1521. He married Elizabeth a year later in 1522, who was a former nun who had also annulled her vows. Bucer preached Reformed doctrine all around Alsace, where he had grown up, but he was excommunicated, which forced him to flee to Strasbourg. Bucer moved to Strasbourg in May 1523 as a refugee. He was unable to initially secure a ministry position, so he began giving lectures to students who were able to pay for them right out of his house. He later became an unofficial chaplain to the Lutheran pastor Matthew Zell, and then became the pastor of St. Aurelia's Church. During his ministry, Bucer participated in several colloquies, which are church councils that are less formal and not authoritative. The most famous being the Marburg Colloquy of 1529, where Martin Luther and Huldrych Zwingli debated the Eucharist, among other topics. Bucer participated in these discussions along with other notable reformers such as Philip Melanchthon and Heinrich Bullinger. He also participated in the Diet of Augsburg in 1530 and in several Roman Catholic Protestant formal discussions at Haguenau in 1540, Worms also in 1540, and Regensburg in 1541. At Regensburg, Bucer was able to help successfully negotiate an agreement on the doctrine of justification with Roman Catholics. Bucer was also a prolific writer who published Christian works of various kinds for 3 decades between 1520 and 1551. Though he does not have a single classic work like Calvin's Institutes or Luther's The Bondage of the Will, he contributed to some of the most important documents in Reformation history. Though the First Helvetic Confession was composed primarily by Heinrich Bullinger, Bucer assisted in both its composition and editing. This document, which was produced in 1536, was the statement of the Swiss Church's beliefs until the enlarged Second Helvetic Confession appeared in 1566. With the help of fellow Strasbourg reformer Wolfgang Capito, Bucer composed the Tetrapolitan Confession, which was a 23-chapter document which was presented to Emperor Charles V in July 1530. Bucer would write for a wide audience, from children to laymen to kings. He composed 2 short catechisms, which were written for school-age children in Strasbourg. He had his lectures turned into commentaries, and he wrote on a variety of topics from doctrinal treatises to Christian living subjects such as the married life. He was also heavily involved with his local government, as well as governments across Europe. Donald K. McKim provides a sample just to show how involved he was in corresponding with governments. The following sampling was just 6 months of ministry in 1533. Here's what McKim says. During those months, Bucer corresponded with the city of Constance 38 times, Augsburg 16 times, Basel 11 times, Zurich 8 times, St. Gallen 7 times, Bern 3 times, Paris 3 times, Ulm 3 times, Wittenberg 2 times, and Orb 2 times. That's a total of 93 letters between Bucer and government figures in 6 months. Now, as an ecumenist, Bucer labored tirelessly to overcome the Lutheran Reformed divide on the Lord's Supper, and realized some success with the signing of the Wittenberg Concord on May 29, 1536. Lutherans at the Diet of Augsburg had declined to have discussions with him, and when he traveled north to confer with Martin Luther at Coburg, Luther was suspicious of his beliefs and would not sign the articles that Bucer proposed. However, he did not give up, taking the lead in efforts to secure a standard Protestant interpretation of the Lord's Supper. The perseverance paid off, and the document was signed by German reformers and Lutherans, including both Philip Melanchthon and Martin Luther. But not everyone appreciated the compromise that was needed for unity, as when the word had reached the Swiss Reformed, they saw Bucer as having capitulated to the Lutherans, and a prominent Zwinglian wife called him the Fanatic of Unity. The most difficult year of Bucer's life came in 1541. In that year, the bubonic plague swept through Strasbourg. His wife Elizabeth died along with several of his children. He also lost close friends like fellow reformer Wolfgang Capito, and his friend John Calvin was forced to flee to Geneva because of the plague as well. Bucer married Wolfgang's widow, Rosenblatt, in April 1542. This was actually done at the encouragement of his wife Elizabeth just before her death. Rosenblatt brought 4 children into this new marriage, and they had a daughter together, whom they named Elizabeth in memory of his late wife. Bucer was expelled from Strasbourg in April 1549. The reason for his expulsion was his refusal to accept the city senate's decision to abide by the conditions of the peace interim, which was imposed by the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V on the city. Now, this interim restored various privileges and properties to the Catholics of Strasbourg, including the right to celebrate the Mass. He then fled to England, where he was welcomed by Archbishop Thomas Cranmer. Bucer arrived in England at the beginning of 1549. Thomas Cranmer quickly saw to it that he was assigned a teaching post, where he became the Regius Professor of Divinity at the University of Cambridge. Though he had not finished his doctorate work at the University of Heidelberg, Cambridge gave him an honorary Doctorate of Divinity degree for his many writings. To help with the Reformation in England, he wrote a blueprint of natural reform entitled The Kingdom of Christ. This book was the most comprehensive and detailed blueprint for the Christian Reformation drawn up anywhere in 16th century Protestantism. Bucer had criticized certain elements in the First Book of Common Prayer and was asked by Thomas Cranmer to offer formal criticism for the revision. He delivered this in his work The Censura in January 1551. Though England was good to Bucer, Bucer was not satisfied in England, where he grew weary and disappointed with the Reformation there. He died just a few short years after arriving in England on February 28, 1551. He was honored at his funeral with England's theological luminaries in attendance, but after King Edward's death and the Catholic Queen Mary's ascension, she had his body dug up and burned after a sham trial for heresy. After Mary died and Queen Elizabeth took the throne, she reinstated Reformation ideals and had Bucer restored to a position of honor with a second funeral in 1560, as well as a commemorative monument on his grave. Martin Bucer is remembered today as a champion of unity and a key figure of the spread and defense of the Protestant Reformation. Unlike Calvin, who has Calvinists, and Luther, who has Lutherans, Bucer did not inspire a new denomination or a school of followers. Instead of primarily influencing one tradition, he made a mark on many, specifically the Reformed, Lutheran, and Anglican traditions. Bucer is one of the most important and key figures of the Reformation who is not widely known. He played a background and supporting role, and therefore his influence on the Reformation does not correspond to his level of celebrity status today. Bucer truly believed that the Christian faith was like Paul says in Ephesians 4:5, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, and thus spent most of his ministry years laboring to help different theological traditions find concord. 500 years after the Reformation, the Protestant Church is more sectarian than ever. There are more areas of disagreement, and with the introduction of social media in the 21st century, it's easier than ever to debate, criticize, and deplatform fellow Christians across the globe instantly. More than ever, Martin Bucer's ecumenical spirit should be rediscovered and held up as an inspiration to tolerate and love those whom one disagrees with, and to work towards healing rather than creating further divisions. We need more fanatics of unity like Martin Bucer today. If you want to learn more about Martin Bucer, check out his biography by Donald McKim. I read that book and it was really helpful as I did the research for this video. You can get the book today on Amazon. The link is going to be in the video description. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this video helpful, appreciate it if you give it a like on the way out. Thanks so much.